So got a little bit of a different episode today, guys. It's more about me. I don't have a guest on as such. I've got Charlotte on again, aka Frankie Wild, aka Frankie Mild. Um,
Frank.
yeah, Frank the Tank. Um, yeah, she's going to be asking me some questions about my background, about how I got started, about what I do now, um, about how I got into this podcast as well, really, as well as I've got some daft little section that I want to put in just about customer reviews that I think is absolutely class. So yeah, I'm going to introduce Frank again. There she is.
Me.
Woo! Yeah,
Hiya.
yeah,
Yeah.
way. And you're on the podcast, so yeah, cool. Let's
Di-
go.
different setup.
Yeah, different setup today.
Yeah. Oh no, now that I'm speaking and you're looking at me, I'm right. No, it's good. We need to introduce who you are.
Yeah,
The, the
because
man behind.
obviously I want to ask loads of questions about loads of different people, but kind of hard to get my story in sometimes.
Yeah,
So
people can do the research. They can watch this episode and be
yeah,
like, oh, he's 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 off it. That's mad. He's doing mental things. And we're going to get into that. So we need to start from the beginning because it goes way back, doesn't it? How many years have you been in this industry?
in hospitality and chefing, way over 20. I'm 36 this year, a couple of months, and literally I've been doing this since I was 13, 14 year old. Yeah, started off in basically my uncle's fish and chip shop, just working like over the summers when my parents didn't know about it, just to earn a bit of pocket money. Because yeah, I wasn't allowed to earn pocket money after a certain age. I wasn't supposed to be getting any off my nana or my auntie, so and off my gran when I stayed over. So I got a little part-time job in my uncle's fish shop instead, just peeling spuds. And then yeah, just kind of progressed from there. Really, like I said, I mentioned my nana and my auntie. They're both um, like worked at my uncle's fish and chip shop. Both worked in a bakery. My gran, who was their mum, was a chef in the Second World War, and basically taught me like a lot of stuff when I was a kid, like baking cakes for everyone down the street, like the doctors, everything. You know, when it got to Christmas, you'd be like
Yeah, I
getting,
know. I
yeah,
know those kind of
y-
those kind of people, salt
yeah,
of the earth,
yeah, salt of
proper
the earth.
community. What was it you got out of it as a kid? Like, can you remember what was it that made you want to like join in and be taught and make things?
I guess it just made it really fun for me. Like it was just something where it was like I was always involved. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like so, like I said about the Christmas cakes, like we've been making them 6 months in advance. That's not something you're making like a couple of days before. Do
yeah,
you know what I mean? That's like we're jarring stuff up, and it's like you're learning about like fermentation and things, and it's like these things I didn't even think about when I was a kid. You know what
yeah.
I
It
mean?
was
It was
just
just
fun
it was
doing
just
it.
fun to do it, and then
Yeah.
as I got older, I kind of realized that I took on this like knowledge that I didn't realize that I had until I got kind of into being a professional chef. And then it kind of you kind of go like, oh, I already know this stuff. Do you know what I
Oh,
mean?
oh, this is why we do it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
it's like,
Like I didn't know the reasons. I just knew how.
oh, that's cool.
And then it was kind of like obviously when I left school, went on to work in more like commercial places, stuff like that. Like your typical sort of standard bar jobs and things, and working in like Pizza Hut and Nando's, just kind of like filling in jobs while I was at college and that. Obviously, my like passion was like music, wasn't it, and art. It wasn't necessarily like being a chef as such, but like
I always remember you were just naturally good with food. Like even when we were like surviving on like it wasn't great. It was a lot of processed food, but you would always do things to elevate it. Like can you remember those shop bought bagels and the bird's eye crispy chickens?
yeah,
And you'd
yeah, it'd
always
just
like
be
do the
daft.
peppers and the
Yeah, there'd just be
onions
daft
and
little
yeah,
things where it wouldn't just be like the standard whatever you could get in.
yeah.
It'd always
It
be
could
like
never
that.
be basic. You always
No,
had to
no,
do
no.
something to it. So it feels
Yeah,
like you've always like had that in you.
well, that's the thing though. Like for me, is I learned how to and like I got separated from like my family from like quite an early age. Do you know what I mean? So like I said, my nana and my auntie and stuff, they kind of like helped me out, but they could only help me out so much. Do you know what I mean? I come from like a very working class family. Like we don't have a lot of money, or So you just kind of like learn to adapt and learn to like use what you've got. And like I said, the skills that I kind of had when it come to like the stuff that I learned from my nana, learned from my auntie, learned from my gran especially, was like how to make basic food into good food. That was the difference. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't just about like or getting by. It was like no, like you can make this very basic thing into the most amazing thing. It just depends on how much time and effort and you're
Mm,
willing to spend on it more than anything. And like that's whether that's thinking about it or whether that's just spent time in the kitchen doing it. Do you know what I mean? But that's just kind of how like I've always done it. It's like a game of ready steady cook, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? It's like the
yeah.
best thing ever. Just going in the kitchen and just do 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 do.
I used to love that show.
Yeah, it was close, wasn't it?
I'd die if I was on it though.
Susie Salt.
Right. So up to your teen years, aren't we?
Yeah, up to my teen years, obviously, like I said, worked in just commercial places, and then obviously we met. Um, yeah, I was in colleges. I was just kind of like trying to do my thing with, like I said, with music, wasn't I? Really,
Yeah, you were at
instead,
college.
yeah, I'd done a bit of like sort of road tech like stuff. Um, just being a roadie, like lugging things in and out. This was like a little bit just before I met you, and then like I said, working once again in bars, in hospitality, just constantly being around customers and people, and then you just kind of something you just kind of get used to and learn to adapt to. And with those environments as well, I guess like they're very like hustling, and there's always something going
Mm,
on, and you're always meeting new people. So for me, it was always like really exciting to be in those environments. Like I could never really be. I tried like the office environment, and it's just like you sat talking to the same group, like 10 people. And don't get me wrong, when like you can get a good team and work in an amazing team and you can all get along, or you can sometimes you can't get along. Do you know what I mean? But when you have those like opportunities to kind of, like you said, meet different customers and like hear people's stories, and people are coming and going, especially in bar
mm.
work, because you have a lot of students that come and go as well that work there. So it's just like it was just always a thing where it was quite exciting.
Like an office job wouldn't be stimulating enough for you.
No, no, not at
Like,
all.
nah.
Like I said, I tried it. I tried some call center work and stuff like that, and it was
Me
just
too.
like being in the same environment, sat in the same chair. That was the problem as well. Is like I need to move. Like I'm probably moving about in this chair right
Yeah, you
now.
are. You're like a Bond villain.
Yeah, like I can't help it. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's one of those things. Like I also the thing for me is I guess this kind of helped me from being like really young was like I learn with my hands. Like I need
Mm,
like to do to learn. So like I can't sit there and just look at a computer process. I've got to like manually do stuff. That's why even with the sound tech side of things, like I wanted to go
yeah.
down the live sound because it the idea of sat behind a computer just didn't really like advertise to me.
Yeah, it's like an attention thing, isn't it? Like I can't follow like spoken instructions.
No.
Like I need to physically do it or I'm never going to
Yeah,
remember
it's not
it.
going to register. It's not
Yeah.
going to sit in
So my
there.
brain just goes, if somebody's talking at you or there's information being fed at you, my brain's just like la 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 because it's
Yeah,
not
because you're thinking
stimulating
about
enough
something
for me.
else. Like I'm not concentrating on what you're talking about.
Totally get it.
Like it needs to be in front of me. It needs to be on my hands. Need to be doing it, or I need to be like doing the steps.
Not an environment you can thrive in.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. But like I said, I guess we were talking about like how did I get into it professionally though?
Mm,
Was when we moved to Newcastle. Like
made the big leap to the bigger, small city.
yeah, biggest small city that is
Just up the
Newcastle.
road.
It felt massive when we first moved
Oh
there though. It
yeah,
felt absolutely enormous.
yeah.
But yeah, obviously we moved up there, and we said it in like your podcast, like a little brief history about it. But I, once again, I picked up a call center job just to kind of take a wage. Do you know what I mean?
Oh
Just when
yeah, I
we first
remember that.
moved, and I worked in Sky for like 3 months, and I just could not hack it at all. Like the only thing that got me through it was the fact that there's like a comedian lad now, Robin Armstrong. Do you know what I mean? Who like wasn't a comedian then. He was just some proper sound lad that I'd met, and like he hasn't changed. He hasn't like at all from like then to now. Like he's just developed like how funny he is into
Mm,
like slowly being like a trade. Do you know what I mean? Into being like his work and something
bet
that
he's
he.
massive on TikTok.
Yeah, I think he is, and Instagram and stuff like that. But Um, After that, it was like I needed to take something seriously, didn't I? I tried with the whole. Obviously, if you're watching the podcast, you can see like I'm covered in tattoos. If you know me, I'm absolutely covered in tattoos. But like, I really wanted to be a tattoo artist, didn't I? That was like really that was the one focus I kind of had after the whole music thing.
Mm.
Um, didn't actually mention any of that really, to be honest with you. When we first moved to Newcastle, I tried to get into university, didn't I, to
Yeah,
do music.
that was part of the incentive of you going up with
Yeah,
me,
yeah,
wasn't
yeah,
it?
exactly. So like, I tried to get in university. I didn't get in university at the time because I was like a few
It was
UCash credits short
UCAS.
or
Oh,
something
it
like that.
was, oh, yeah, it was just
Um,
bull.
yeah, so that didn't happen. Got that job in Sky. Didn't like that because obviously it wasn't exactly fulfilling my passions of doing stuff. Always been really creative into my arts, like I said before. Went to CCAD, da 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 da.
We're always drawing. That's all you did in your
Yeah,
free
always
time.
drawing, always just designing stuff for my mates' bands, like whether it be T-shirts, album covers, EP covers. Like there's just
And
always.
portfolios everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. And then so it was like, oh well, I'd love to be a tattoo artist. Like I'd love to have that freedom. That was the biggest thing for me, was the
Yeah.
freedom behind it. Was like, yeah, obviously people want specific designs or whatever doing, but it was like, well, that can work around my time and
Mm,
I can get in so many clients at whatever,
mm.
and it would fulfill like the need for like my drawing and my art constantly. But once again, it's like they like getting, especially 15 years ago, that was like getting gold dust. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean? There wasn't nowhere near as many tattoo shops.
it was not like what you knew, it was who you knew. It was
Yeah,
very clicky.
yeah,
It was
yeah,
we just moved up there. It was hard to get into.
yeah. And I didn't know like anybody, and like I went round like what nearly every tattoo studio, just like showing them my portfolio, trying to
Mm,
chat to people, even going and getting some tattoos done off people. Do you know, trying to like sort of have a way in, really. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, it
Like, look, I'm
was
sound like I'll
tough,
get a bit
wasn't
of
it?
work done. Like, yeah, because you're just trying to show like a bit of dedication, and like obviously you're just trying to get chatting to them while you're getting a bit of
Mm,
work done, trying to like let them know your story without kind of like throwing yourself at people because like they don't like it. Do you know what I mean? But that didn't work out. Once again, it's a little bit like your story, isn't it? Where
yeah,
like you kind of we go from one thing to another thing to another
yeah,
thing, and you until we I found my thing.
yeah.
Um,
Like quite resilient.
yeah,
Like although you're experiencing failure, you've never let it set you back.
no, no, and I've just every time I've like anything that I've ever done, I've just kind of put it on the shelf rather than
Dusted yourself off, right?
yeah, and then like I might bring it back off the shelf. Do you know what I mean? Like a few years later, but like we'll get back to
Ah,
like
yeah. We've got some stuff on that later.
yeah, yeah. So uh, anyway, the whole tattoo thing didn't work. The whole uni thing didn't work. Call center is no good for me. So I applied for an apprenticeship, didn't I?
Was
Um,
that like randomly? Did you just see it randomly and thought, oh, I'll apply for it,
well,
or was it something you were seeking?
I was looking for some apprenticeships. I needed some sort of trade or skills or whatever, and I was trying to think of whatever I could apply myself to. And like I said, I'm not really good at the whole like it needs to be manual. It needs to be
Mm,
something like that. All my friends kind of going off on the rigs and doing that sort of stuff. I don't like heights. I don't like helicopters. I don't like the idea of it. The money sounded great at the time, but
the isolation
the
and the mundane
isolation,
of it,
yeah,
or
it
you'd go mental.
oh none of it would have paid off for me like
You'd
at
have
all.
gone mental.
Like I said, like the thing that kind of motivated me with most jobs is like the people that's been around me, and like I said, the people I've met. Do you
Mm,
know what I mean? And their stories. That's the stuff that kind of like inspires me and kind of keeps me motivated to a certain extent. So like me being on my own on the North Sea, do you know what I mean? Surrounded by like people I don't necessarily know, interchanging
mm.
constantly. Like it wouldn't have been fulfilling at all. Like no amount of money would have like made me happy in that
Yeah,
situation.
you
I
probably
don't think.
wouldn't have stayed very long.
No, not at all. So I got an apprenticeship, applied for it. Within about 2 weeks, I got an interview. Um, I remember getting the bus to Gosforth, like having to get two buses to Gosforth from Gateshead, and even when I was doing that, I was thinking like this is a bit of a trek. Like,
Mm,
am I going to have to do this every day? But obviously, it was a whole different animal within itself, wasn't it? Like, it wasn't just being at the race course. Like, I went everywhere,
yeah.
like absolutely everywhere. But yeah, I went for the interview. I just felt that I had it, like instantly. Like, I know that sounds like I'm bragging, but
You always smash interviews though.
yeah, but
You're really good at them.
I think my age and just kind of what I wanted was a
Yeah.
bit different. And once again, is like it wasn't just oh, it's something that I could like put myself into. It's something that I was like had a background in with my family, and it was something that I could kind of like translate into something that I was like passionate about.
Mm,
Like exactly what we said is I make the most mundane food into like non-boring food. You know what I mean? Like just anything awesome that I possibly can. So yeah, I think that just kind of translated a little bit. And then I remember leaving, walking back out of the race course, and it was like the longest thing ever, isn't it, to get to like out
yeah.
of the actual car park and down to where the bus is. And I remember some like young kid walking past me, like just tail between his legs, looking sheepish, like didn't have the confidence. And I was just like,
About to go in for an
yeah,
interview.
about going in for an interview. And I just thought, like, if this is my competition, I definitely have no worries. Do you know what I mean? Like, I know that's awful, but
I love it.
I've got it, I've got it, and I did. I literally within a week, I got a phone call, and yeah, just a little bit of technical difficulty, so I've just had to get the camera set up and started again. Yeah, get back into it. We were talking about when I was at started at Newcastle Racecourse. Um, went for my interview, and I think that's about as far as we got,
It
wasn't it?
was, yeah.
Yeah.
You passed
So
the lad on the way out and he was looking all sheepish and like
yeah, yeah.
unconfident and
But yeah, like I said, I got that a week later. I started within about 2 weeks. It's the first time had to buy like chef white and knives.
oh god, yeah.
So like that was exciting. Do you know what I mean? Like it was the
Yeah.
first time I'd actually been like, oh, I've got to invest
I
here.
know,
Like
that was
so
nuts.
that was kind of like the start of my future, was because I actually had to invest in my future. Like there
And
wasn't a just, oh, it's a job, you provided with this, you provided whatever. It was like, no, you want it, you've got to dedicate yourself to it. So
you had to invest in tools for your trade.
yeah, exactly.
Tools is the trade.
Tools of the trade, and I remember getting my first set, and it cost an absolute fortune.
So with the yellow handles, was that them?
The orange handles,
You the
yeah, yeah,
orange, yeah.
yeah. We still got them. They were like Wengers, so they're actually a decent make. They were just everyone else had like black handled knives, and everyone used to steal each other's knives. And like with the race course, I used to travel about loads. So
mm,
like I used to have to take loads of kit with me to different places. So like you said, it wasn't when I was at Newcastle, we had kind of most big machinery, the things that we needed, like hand mixers, whisks, like daft things like that, that are just all provided. But then we got like satellite kitchens, so I'd get put in like Edgefield, Catterick, in places in York, in Sunderland. Like we go do
mm.
like conferences and dinners. Like we do like, oh, I remember doing stuff in like little marquees in the winter with the snow, do you know what I mean, coming down, and it being absolutely like dreadful. But you'd have to take all your own stuff, and the amount of times you'd have like so many agency chefs that had come on board, and like they just take you things, do you know what I mean? They'd be on the van, they'd be gone, and
Never seen
you never
again.
seen again, and you'd just be like, oh, cool. But like someone couldn't like pinch a bright orange handled like
Yeah.
chef's knife, do you know what I mean? So
I
it was
remember
like,
those knives. So you got the job at the race course, right?
yeah.
So what would like how did it hit you going into because had you ever been in any type of kitchens like that? Because like was the blooming pizza shop you worked in, Pizza Hut, like completely different scale, isn't it?
Completely different, and even like the people I worked with were completely different. Like I said, I'd gone from working with like predominantly students who kind of like came and went, and this I guess was the first time I'd worked with like a group of people that had worked there for a long time, that like kind of knew the ropes. Like I said, obviously there was agency chefs that came in, but like the company that I worked for were like based in Leeds and then had places in Newcastle, and like we kind of intermingled, you know, so like you'd meet them at like a different race course. So it was kind of like nice to be in this environment where it was like oh, like this actually a pretty cool team, and like I hate using like the definition of family, but it was the first sort of like family dynamic I'd kind of had. Like we could take
Mm.
the piss out of each other, but at the end of the day, like you give each other a hug, you bought each other a pint, and then the next day it was forgotten about. You know what I mean? If you pissed each other off, like
Would you say it was like the first job where you were like, oh, this is professional. This is a profession.
yeah, 100%, like massively. It, from what I thought a job was, like I said, working in nightclubs and stuff, to then going into that, it was like, oh, I'm doing like ridiculous amount of hours per week here, and within it, I'm learning so much. Do you know what I mean? And it's like I was catering for thousands of people. It wasn't like I was just doing like little a la carte menus and like just doing like 50 heads per night. I was doing 1,500 people per day for like 3 or 4 days running across like 4 or 5 different race courses sometimes.
Can I just make a comment? You don't do things by halves, do you?
Oh, not at
It's
all.
not like you just go into chef and then we're just like working in a pub or a restaurant, doing
No.
like so you're just like, woo, no, I'm gonna aim for the hardest, the biggest.
Yeah, I guess so. Because like, I guess it's just me though. Like I've always had sort of big dreams and aspirations, isn't it? So
You love a
like,
challenge.
yeah, I love a challenge, and that was like I said, before we cut off, I remember walking up to the race course, and like I said, the length of just walking up, it took 10 minutes just to walk from the bus stop to the race course, and that was without the two buses I had to
Mm.
get prior to that to get there, and the time I'd have to get up in the morning. So it was like I said, I'd already been presented with the challenge before I even started,
Yeah.
and it was like, well, do I want this? Yeah, this seems pretty cool. Do you know what I mean? This is something I can invest myself into. This is something I want to learn about. It's a career I can actually like put myself into and like really develop over time. Like it's not something immediate that's going to happen. It's a skill that I'm going to be ever learning from. Do you know what I mean? And obviously, being a chef, you only last a finite amount of time in certain places. Do you know what I mean? Because I feel like you have to move on to learn more,
Yeah.
or unless they're like it's a badass kitchen and they're getting like chefs from around the world that are coming in and you're
Mm.
constantly learning, progressing from them. But when you're in Newcastle, that's not really happening. It's not London. Do you know what I mean? It's not a massive city.
Didn't someone you worked with at the racecourse say, I know I'm jumping ahead here, but when you left, they were like, "Oh, I'm not surprised. Like he's gone beyond here now. We can't do anything more for him."
Yeah, not to brag, but like my skills and what I did and my aspirations kind of exceeded what the race course could give me. So I worked there for 3 years. Like I had some amazing times, like some absolutely incredible times, like seeing different places, like I said, meeting loads of different people, meeting different chefs. There was some that couldn't be asked and they were just getting through it. And then there was
Mm.
some that absolutely loved what they were doing and were willing to teach you and willing to share your stuff. But it was more of the like downside than the upside towards the end of it. Like it kind of gets into one of those things. Like I work for a massive events company, do you know what I mean? And with that becomes like more of a shareholder side, a financial side, a business side that kind of takes control of the business rather than like chefs being able to do the thing and being able to
Yeah.
progress. So like the finances get smaller, the budget gets smaller, but you're still expected to do the same amount of work. And like so that was like a transcendence throughout the company. But while I was there, like I said, we've got to go all over the place. Like I got to do like air shows. I got to go work for some unbelievable events. Do you know what I mean? And like meet some like pretty cool people, like footballers and stuff like that. Like that had come in. They'd have boxing events on at the race course, which I absolutely loved. Do you know what I mean? Because we get like free tickets to just, or it wasn't even tickets. You just basically step outside the kitchen. You just be stood there watching it, and then when you had to go make something, you just nip back in.
That's wicked.
We all take turns. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, like obviously I've sidetracked a little bit here from what we were talking about, but it's yeah, exactly what you said there. Though is like if you don't like progress and you don't move on, you don't learn. And with the company that I was in, I wasn't, and I did have a guy who, funnily enough, I had a lot of encounters with during our time. Like he was a lot older than me, kind of. I've earned my stripes, don't need to do my sort of
Mm.
thing. But you could see I was like aspiring, see I was like wanting to kind of like push myself in the culinary world and like to do something for myself, and the race course was never going to fulfill that. Do you know what I mean? It's not when I was doing like making 1,000 like lemon possets and 1,000 cheesecakes. Like it's amazing because if you can do something in a batch of 1,000, imagine what you can do in a scale of 1 or a
Yeah.
scale of 10. Do you know what I mean? That's the difference, and that's the thing I wanted to pursue after. So like I said, I had a solid few years at the race course. Like it taught me so much. Like it taught me perseverance, and it taught me like determination.
I remember a lot of hard times.
Yeah,
I remember some of the like the times you were getting in like after midnight, but then you were up to get on a van at 5 again,
oh,
and
I'd be getting picked up off the A1, like literally, like probably like 4 out of like 3 days a week. I'd be getting picked up to go somewhere, but I'd have to get up at 4:30 in the morning. I would walk from where we lived in Gateshead through an industrial estate in Team Valley. I would bench up on a bus stop near a pub just off the a roundabout on the A1 near Dunstan. And then we'd hop in the van at like 5:15. Do you know what I mean? And like someone would pick me up. We'd drive down to somewhere, being Catterick for or Sedgefield or York, like I said, or just some random race course, random event somewhere. We'd do a shift. So you put your shift in. You'd work like you do your setup, then you do your race day, then you maybe do afternoon tea. Then sometimes you would have an event on the night, which would be at a different race
oh
course.
my
So
god.
then you get picked up from there and go get dropped off somewhere else. And then you wouldn't get finished until about half 10, 11 o'clock. But then you'd still have to drive back from that place,
Mm,
still have to get dropped off on the A1, and then still have to walk 20 minutes home. So I wouldn't get home till like 11:30, 12 o'clock, sometimes 12:30. And then repeat the same thing. But the maddest thing about all of that was my shift patterns. So like I didn't have like, oh, you work like you've got 2 days off a week
yeah.
and da 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 da. It was, oh, you're working 21 days straight, but then you've got 8 days off that you're entitled to for the month. And then at next month you're gonna have your other 8 days at the start of the month, so you've got 16 days off. But it'd take you a week to recuperate because you've
Yeah.
just done like you're talking 12 to 14 to 16-hour days for anywhere between 10 to 18 days straight, sometimes more. So you just be like,
At the beginning of the year, you used to have a lot of time off, didn't you?
that was the best
January,
time. Yeah,
February.
yeah, that was the
Yeah.
best time. I'd have loads of time off
There was
because, like I
no
said, it was
races
events
on.
based, and because of the winter and because of the dark nights, like there was no racing, there wasn't many conferences on. All the Christmas dues were done. So, but yeah, like I said, that's the biggest thing that taught me was just like, was I willing to do that? Was I willing to put myself through that? Like you said,
Mm,
there's so many times of heartache, and like I remember having phone calls with you, being stood in a dark
I
Tattersall
remember these.
downstairs, like literally just square footage of darkness around me, just on the phone to you at like 11:30, just being like, I've missed my bus home, like I've got no money to get a taxi, like it's going to cost me 20 quid to get here, but I'm going to have to get a taxi in the morning because I need to be back at the race course for 6 in the morning, like just devastated. But I guess it was you that kind of got me through a lot of that. Do you know what I mean? Like you were my motivation, like, and you were my drive to keep going with it. Do you know what I mean? It's like you're good at what you do. It's hard, but we've got this. Do you know what I mean? Like, so don't worry, you're not doing it on your own. And I guess that was the biggest thing for me. That was kind of like cool. Well, at least like even if I've only got a few hours at home, I know it's with the person I love and this person that cares about me the most.
Do you remember sometimes I used to get up for moral support with you, even
Yeah,
though I didn't have to be up,
yeah, yeah. Or like
just to like make you a cuppa while you were getting ready and
yeah,
stuff?
or like we were like passing ships in the night. So obviously when we spoke on your podcast, like you worked in a club. So sometimes you'd finish at like 4 in the morning,
Yeah.
you'd get home and you'd be putting the kettle on and I would be getting out of bed. So then we would have like half an hour in the morning where you just kind of like we didn't really say much. We were just kind of like being in each other's presence, but like just kind of enjoying the moment, you know what I mean? Before you went to bed and I went to work for like the next 14
Mad,
hours and didn't
wasn't
see
it?
you. And then by the time I got home, you were back off to work again, like on a weekend. It was
Crazy,
I,
wasn't
I
it?
don't know how like we survived it a lot of the times, do you know what I mean? Like because we didn't see each other so much.
Absence makes the heart grow
I
fonder.
guess it does, yeah.
While you were at the race course, did you do the Nectar Awards?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that yeah, I guess that's like part of like my accomplishments, my achievements, really, isn't it? Like that's the thing
Mm,
that I think that's the thing that spurred me on to want to go do something else
mm,
was because like I said, prior to the race course, I wasn't a professional chef. I hadn't worked in professional kitchens. There's not that many good places around Middlesbrough at that time. So when we moved to Newcastle, that was my first like venture into the professional culinary world. So it was kind of like, right, well, this is all I know. But then I went to college. I met people that worked with some unbelievably like fantastic chefs. Do you know what I mean? Like the likes of Terry Laybourne and stuff like that that were going in for like Nectar Awards, and I was like, I don't have a clue what this is. Like, I didn't do culinary school when I was in Middlesbrough. I don't even think that was a thing because I remember when I went, Middlesbrough College wasn't part of it. Do you know what I mean? I think it
Mm.
was very sort of like the North exclusive. But yeah, obviously I did the Northeast Catering Awards and like the technical awards, and I went in for Milfoy, and then I went in for best dessert. I got silver in both, um, but it like I said, it was the first time that I'd met other chefs and people that were like way better than what I was or what I thought was better. The only difference was when I did my Milfoy, I didn't realize that it was something that like you kind of brought pre-assembled.
Oh,
So like I didn't understand like my definition of it what
I don't
was
even know
was
what it
well
is.
basically in French it just means many layers.
Right.
So on my understanding of it anyway, and my understanding of it at that time. And everyone had brought like pre-made pastry and cream in bags, and all they had to do was assemble, put it on a plate, and present it. That was more of what it was. I didn't realize that. I wanted mine to be like multiple layers of like, basically, I wanted to make shortbread like from scratch. I wanted caramelized apples in between it. I wanted a toffee sauce to go with it, and then I wanted I think it was like a nutmeg and cinnamon cream just to kind of like drizzle over the top. And I think I had like fresh thyme in the shortbread, so it was a bit more like a sweet, savory note. But no one else would put that amount of effort into it. Do you know what
Oh
I mean?
my
So there was all these people
God.
that came from these fantastic colleges and these good programs and these unbelievable kitchens, and then there was just little old, well, not even little old me. Do you know what I mean? Like this person who just kind of didn't really know what was going on, kind of just threw this thing in the mix, and then the next thing I ended up getting like a silver in it because I was kind of like, wait there, he's actually like done way more than any of these people have even attempted to. Do you know what I mean? This is just so I think that's kind of like where me going, oh, actually, I can contend with these people.
Mm,
I can go into these kitchens. I can do these types of things because they're not doing this. They don't have this aspiration. They don't have this drive or motivation. They're just doing what they've been told to do by their head chef.
so when you won those awards, were you just like, bye bye, race course?
Yeah, yeah,
Like, I
instantly.
need more now.
Yeah, instantly. Well, on that day, I remember getting a phone call because basically they wanted me back at work, and
Mm,
all it was a prep day. So it wasn't like it was an important like day going on. There wasn't a race going on. There was no conferences. There was no dinners. It was just they wanted me into work. But I was always allocated one day off per week that was supposed to happen, and it never did. Do you know what I mean? I was always having to catch up on college work
yeah.
and stuff because of the amount of days that I worked in a row. And I remember having a phone call with my general manager at the time, and like getting quite annoyed because I was like, well, I'm waiting for my results and I'd like to stay. And he was like, well, I'd like you back at work. And I was like, right, but do you need me? Do you know what I mean? And once again, I wasn't a young kid. I wasn't some 16, 17-year-old. That was just someone willing to go like, oh, yes, sir, no, sir, three
Mm,
bags full, sir. It was kind of like, hang on a second. No, this is my opportunity. This is my opportunity for me to shine and to stand out against these people. And also it's an opportunity for you as a race course kind of highlight that. Do you know what I mean? Like if I get first in these, then you've beat all these colleges, you've beat all these
mm.
people that are supposed to work in the best places in Newcastle. And I was like, hang on a second, this isn't happening. Like I'm not coming in today, mate. I'm going to tell you now. Like I'll do all the extra work tomorrow, the day after. I'm not bothered. And he was so adamant about it. And I think that just kind of cemented me going, oh, you know what? I've done well here. I've competed against people that I thought were way better than me. I've done better than I thought I ever would. And I've got this person trying to hold me down and
Hold
hold
you
me
back.
back.
Yeah.
And I was like, nah, I'm gone. And like they kind of held me back a little bit anyway with the whole like college and because that
Mm,
was supposed to I started an apprenticeship and I worked 18 months before I even started college,
mad.
and I had to put myself on a college course. I had to enroll myself and then basically give them the forms and go, can you sign this, please, and make sure you pay them because that would help me and you massively here. So that was like my tie with the race course. Then was like, right, well, I need to do something for myself. I need to aspire to a little
Mm,
bit more. I need to learn more. I need to learn from people who want to teach me, who want to build people up, not drag them down. Because that I guess that's a lot of the catering industry and the chefing industry as a whole, like, or what it used to be like. I feel like it's very much different now,
mm.
and it's very much different because that's what there's people like me that want to make it different.
You want to change the culture.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah,
because the culture was toxic, like
was
very,
nasty.
very toxic,
How many
very nasty.
how many fridges did you get shouted in?
Oh, get dragged in a
Shouted at
fridge
in.
by your collar, like no remorse. You get hit in the back of the leg with a spoon, like a hot spoon and stuff, and you're like, "What are you doing? Like, this isn't the 1970s. Like, this is 2010, 2011. Like, grow up. Like,
Yeah, it was
get with
very
the times."
very toxic,
Like,
wasn't
it's
it?
not even woke culture. It's just being a nice person and being
Yeah,
accommodating to somebody.
it's like everyone knows if you rule by fear, you're not going to get the best out of your staff.
No, no, not at all. And
The anxious messes, like
I hate that. I absolutely hate that. Like, I'm a bit more thick-skinned. I come from a bit of a like rougher background. You know what I mean? So like, there's places I worked where like I thought, yeah, this is horrible, and I would talk back to people and go, you know what? Don't speak to me like that because this is unacceptable. Like, if you've got a problem, go take it up with HR, and then we'll deal with this professionally. But if you're not willing to, then mean you've got a problem outside of this place. Do you know what I mean? And once again, I come from a background where it's like you deal with things in a different way, and it's not the way I want to go about things. But if you're going to continue, then we've
mm,
got a problem. But obviously, it never really got to that point. Like they said, like most times, it's a kitchen, it gets heated. That's the whole point.
yeah.
It's boiling point. Do you know what I mean? Like,
If you can't, what is it? If you can't stand the fire, or if you
if you
can't
can't
stand the
stand the heat, get out the
get out the
kitchen. And
kitchen.
obviously, everyone gets irate. It's a very high stress job. There's a lot of factors going on. You've got managers breathing down you. You've got head chefs breathing down you. You've got waitresses asking for stuff. You've got front of house just constantly going at it. It's an ever bustling job, but it's about communication. It's about working with people. And if you don't work with them, then once again, everyone brings each other up instead of pulling each other back and kicking each other while they're down, then you get nowhere
Mm,
and you never get anywhere in this industry. And that's why I notice a lot of places and like the race course company I work for doesn't exist anymore.
yeah, they just weren't getting with the times,
No.
weren't adapting.
But yeah, so
Where did you go next?
um I gave up on that. I gave up on that quite sharply. Uh that was quite abrupt that. I remember putting in my notice. I was trying to sit out, do my entire notice for like my 30 days. I tried to be good. And then they kind of decided to put me on all the worst jobs
Oh,
for the last month. And
so petty.
yeah, it was kind of like, oh, well, you're leaving us. You don't know what you're missing, sort of thing. So we're going to screw you over. And it was kind of like, cool, I'm not bothered. You know what I mean? Like, this isn't the be all and end all of my life here. So, like, you can do whatever you want. But then after 2 weeks, I just lost my tether. Like I said, we went all over, and used to have to sleep in hotels and stuff at times, and I had to share a room with one of my head chefs at the time, and he was a big fella. Do you know what I mean? He drank excessively, and we're all being set up in Weatherby services outside, like drinking, so we weren't freezing our tits off. Do you know what I mean? And then ended up having to share a room with this guy that's just snoring his head off for like 3 days straight. And after the second night, I was like, you know what? I'm done here. I've only got like, I think I had 10 days left, and I was like, I'm done. I was in the middle of York. I was at the race course, didn't say anything. I got dropped off because my knives were in the kitchen, got dropped off at the race course. I'd already rang you and told you what was going on. We'd already booked a train ticket. I literally got there, went in my whites, pretending like nothing was any different, walked in the kitchen, picked up my knives and went, right, see you later, lads, I'm off, and just left. And that was like the end, it'd be all and end all. I was like, I can't do it. So then I guess I was quite fortunate because I had a friend that lived in Middlesbrough that I moved up to Newcastle, and he was in need of basically like a kitchen manager. It was just a small place, like on the quayside. Yeah, it was just a little pub, like really old grotty place. But it was fun. Do you know what I
It
mean?
was
Like,
like a little like yeah, obviously it was work, it's always hard,
yeah,
but it was like a little break from what you'd just gone through.
Yeah, instead of like nearly 100 hours a week, it had gone down to 40 hours a week. And
Mm.
instead of working with like hundreds of people, I was working back once again back with students, but they were working a little bit more like semi-permanently because like it was people that maybe like finished the uni and then they were just kind of like picking up 20, 30 hours where they could sort of thing.
Would you say you were around more people similar to you?
It was
Like,
more creative people.
yeah,
I met like someone that's a tattoo artist now that was just like aspiring to be at the time, and now she's like absolutely unbelievable tattoo artist, Raven. Do you know what I mean? She's like phenomenal, getting like just done Big North Tattoo Weekend or whatever it is in Newcastle. I can't remember what it's called. Um, but yeah, like just getting awards and all that sort of stuff. So once again, it was just around people that were like more like me, more creative. There was musicians there. Like the other cool thing as well is I met Kingy from Hairy Bikers. Like I worked
ah,
with his son,
class.
and like so I got like stories of his dad and stuff like that. And he was a musician, and like so he was just super sound, and like everyone just had a good vibe. But it didn't really have much like going for it in terms of jobs. Like the people that owned it weren't very nice and a whole. Like they own a lot of places in Newcastle, and they're renowned for just
Got a bit
kind
of a
of
monopoly on it,
yeah, a
haven't
bit of
they?
a monopoly, and they're just not very good with their staff.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way. Not good with the staff retention, and they're not bothered because it's just bar work. Um, and then I was quite lucky. I work with a lad who owns Bed's Fried Chicken and Meat Stack in Newcastle now. But he had just gone from like previously working as like an events like part of the events team or an events manager at the Sage in Gateshead. So he knew I wasn't too happy there, and he'd like put a word in because he knew I was a professional chef, not somebody that should be working in a little pub
Mm.
on the quayside. So he put a word in, and then literally I got a phone call off the head chef just being like, "Oh, we need event staff. Do you want to come in and like just have a little like come in for the day?" Da, da, da. So I went in, met the team. They're all absolutely class. And then because I was kind of like willing and dedicated, I was just bank staff to start. I was just event staff. But I ended up doing more hours than most of the people in there because I was just willing to graft, and they always had events on. They always had stuff going with weddings, with conferences again. And that's because that was my background and because I could handle it. They were just like, right, we're paying him more than what we pay a sous chef. Do you know what I mean? So they were like, well, do you want to come on board like full time so we don't have to keep paying you a fortune? And like, also there'd be some weeks where I wouldn't get work. You know what I mean? And they wanted
Yeah,
me to have a
it
bit of
wasn't
consistency.
reliable, was it?
Like I said, I started working with a really good team.
You didn't get your benefits with agency. You didn't get holiday pay. You didn't get
No,
sick pay.
no,
So
none of
like
that.
you
So
needed that
just a
security.
bit of stability, wasn't it? Really, it was a
Mm.
bit of stability, and the perfect thing was from where we lived. It was 10 minutes walk up the road. It was the most
It was all
perfect
right, like,
situation I've
wasn't
been
it?
in ages. Like there was no more traveling an hour and a half up the road and back every day. So 3 hours traveling, and then like I said, 12 hours work. It was oh, you're starting at 10 o'clock in the morning, you're finishing by like between 8 and 10 o'clock at night. You get an hour or two in between for yourself, so I could like go to the gym, which I'd never done. Like there was time for me to like concentrate on myself, and once again work with a team. Like the team I was with was a set team. They were all quite young, and the majority of people that I work with all like kind of aspiring. Do you know what I mean? And
Mm.
wanted to like learn more. And like I said, we had a good head chef at the time, so it was this good harmony that I end up like landing into.
You'd expect to find people somewhere like that because, like, how fancy is the Sage?
Oh, it's
It's
absolutely
so
lovely and
fancy.
amazing. Like all the symphonias that go on, and the type of
The
clientele that are there,
architecture.
like the type of people that I met. Like I met Sting. Do you know what I mean?
Did he
Like
stand too close to
he
you?
did stand too close to me. He literally did stand too close to me. That was
Didn't mind it, did he? Didn't mind the joke.
no, he wasn't too fussed at all. But yeah, like I met him. He did a charity conference one time, or a charity dinner, should I say? And we used to have to set up in like random places. Once again, it's like events and conferencing. So we sometimes have to like makeshift the kitchen in like in the hallways where like the performance artists would go through and stuff. And you'd like rig up like a full kitchen with the lights running over, and
No
like we'd be
way.
sending like starters from there, and then you'd like bring all your hot plates up and stuff with everything, with all your gravies and your vegetables ready to go on your plates and that. So like so it could go from like literally being there into the room. like,
Like
10 feet
super
rather than
fresh,
going like upstairs and like relying on,
degrading
yeah,
as if
and
you.
also it's horrible, but you're relying on agency staff and you're relying on students to take the food in. Do you know what I mean? So like, we put a lot of effort in, so I want to
Yeah.
minimize, and he's paying a lot of money, and it stinks. Do you know what I mean? So we want to minimize the risk in between.
Yeah. Will it look the same on the table as it did when it
Yeah,
left the
yeah,
kitchen?
exactly that. So no, that was an absolutely unbelievable place to work. I worked there for like what, I think it was 2.5 years I worked there, and like I said, during the time I got like so many opportunities. Like, I got to play on one of the biggest drum kits I've ever played on because they had like some drum seminar thing going on, and in the middle of the day, I'd, like, go out for a break, and like, the sun's out on the quayside, and you want to go like have a nice glass of water and just go get some air, and then like walking past the stage and just seeing like a 250 fucking piece drum kit set up, and you're like, can I ever go? And they're like, yeah, while I'm like in my chef whites, just like, do you know what I mean? Like,
Did
it
you
was
feel
just,
embarrassed?
yeah, yeah. Like,
Were
you're
you
just
like,
kind of
go
like,
away, I want to
ah.
play it on my
Like,
own?
and this is on like the main stage of the Sage as well, with like, 100 seats out. Nobody's in
Mm.
there, but like, you're still just kind of like, wow, I'm on the stage at the
Oh, the
Sage here. Like,
acoustics in there was
oh,
mad.
phenomenal. Like, that's what it was built for,
It was
wasn't it?
mad.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah, there was some mad events in there. Like, I got to do some amazing stuff. Like, I catered for World Transplant Games. Like, that was phenomenal. Had an absolute hiccup on that one though as well.
Was that the one that you like? No, a proper did something for the company though, and they were proper impressed with you.
Yeah, yeah, I did. Yeah, I did. So, like, once again, it's the whole events catering side of things. Like, everyone's fighting for contracts. Like, that's a problem when you're going from working in sort of more individual places and like independent places, and places that are like kind of renowned and known and like for their menus. But when you start going at the events like catering side of it, it's all about contracts, about how much money the company can make in a short space of time or within the space of a year. And if they're not reaching targets, then they're going to start looking for other companies to come in and take over that
Mm.
contract. You know what I mean?
And then
Or
you guys lose work,
and then we lose work, or
jobs.
yeah, exactly. And so like, I remember I had an executive chef who was from Huddersfield at the time, and he was absolute amazing chef. Like, this guy taught me so much about everything, like, to do not with just like being a chef, but being like a businessman and being like a good human being as well. Like, very much so, like being very compassionate with people. Like, I always thought you had to kind of go like a bit of the Gordon Ramsay route. That's kind of what you get taught, and that's kind of how I got taught when I was at the race course.
Hmm.
Was like, you berate on people, and like I said, it's not a way I wanted to go about it, but it's kind of hard when you go from one place to another place to sort of like pull yourself away from that.
Hmm.
And then when you've got, like I said, I was a sous chef. It was the first time I'd kind of been put in a position of like superiority in the kitchen, and that becomes with a lot of responsibility, like a lot of responsibility, and especially when you've got an executive chef that's basically a head chef that lives in Huddersfield, so he only spends multiple days up in the week.
Mm.
So you're in charge of like a full team of like anywhere from teenagers up to people that are older than you as well, which can be very difficult because it's like, well, who's this young kid trying to tell me what to do? And you're like, well, I'm not trying to do anything he wouldn't be doing, but for some
Mm.
reason you don't seem to be taking me seriously. Or there'd be the other side of it where you'd have like teenagers coming through, and then because you're kind of in those middle years, but once again, my age and everything, like, I progressed quite quickly because I had my head screwed on.
How
And
old were you here? 24
I
maybe?
was 24 when I
Yeah.
started at the Sage, yeah.
Sous
So
chef at 24.
sous chef at 24, and obviously it was more of an events based role. Do you know what I mean? So like, the sous wasn't necessarily what would transcend into going and working in a Michelin star place
Yeah.
or going and working somewhere like that. But because of the way the rankings worked in that company, and because of the pay position, I guess,
Yeah. Like the
that,
grade.
yeah, because they kind of had to match what they were giving me on the event side. They needed to give me a position that was ballast to
Yeah.
the pay that I was getting. So that's the position I got put in. Got told I was, and then obviously, like I said, it's hard when you've got, like I said, teenagers who kind of not looking up, not really respecting you because you're not like a full grown adult yet, if that makes
Mm.
sense. And then you've got other people. Obviously, by this point, I'm like 26-year old. I'm not 24. I'm going into my like older 20s. but I'm still not at that as like what most people would think like a sous chef, head chef would be, which is over the age of 30. Um, yeah, so once again, like it's the same thing as the race course. The kind of the politics gets in the way of the progression and their enjoyment of being there and the fulfillment of being there. So then it's kind of like, right, what do I do now? You know what I mean? And once again, it's like events catering's good money, and it gives you a lot of freedom. Gives you a lot of freedom to do things outside of that. Um, so once I was done at the Sage, I went.
You were talking about what you did for the company at the transplant games.
Oh, was I?
You saved them loads of money, didn't you?
Oh yeah, I did save him loads of money.
Side
Yeah, I
quest.
did go on a little side quest. Yeah, I did save him loads of money. It was just one of those ones where, like I said, my exec chef, he basically got put in a difficult position, and he was basically right. Well, I'm done. You know what I mean? So he left, and then I got put in charge for kind of what would have been the last couple of months of that company being involved in the Sage. Um, and we had the World Transplant Games. They didn't know whether they were going to take it or not because they didn't know whether the company was leaving. I basically agreed to take on the contract because obviously my events catering background and my side, they didn't know whether they'd be willing to cater for 1,500 people because they didn't know whether everyone would have the skills and capability
Mm.
to do it or whether someone would be able to manage that, especially with like, we had to reduce down hours for chefs and everything
Oh, it was
during that
awful,
time.
wasn't
So
it?
like that, it basically meant me doing double time. So it was kind of going back to race course days. Those hours of being like, oh well, I'm going in at 10 and thinking you've gone. It was I was getting up at 6. I was back in for 7 because I was only
Mm.
down the road, and then I wasn't getting back until the night. But yeah, basically we took on the World Transplant Games. I nearly set the building on fire, and a lot of people had to be evacuated
Whoops.
during the time. But we'll skip past that part. I'll talk about that another time. Um, and yeah, so I just managed to take on the contract, managed to work with a lot of suppliers, work with people that I could actually get stuff in, and once again, like I guess I take it back to when like being with my gran and growing up and kind of what we said about making like the most basic thing into making something amazing. Do
Mm.
you know what I mean? And that's what I'm good at, but I can do it on a large scale. So that's all I did for the company was just manage to just cut them down a lot so that they weren't making a loss on the event. Instead, they were actually making money on it. And like, it's quite nice when you're coming up and you're like 26-year-old and like you've pretty much got a director of a
I
company
was gonna say the directors.
coming and giving you a pat on the
Yeah.
back. He's tasting your foods. Like I made like a lamb tagine, but I had to make that once again, like little small bowls, 1,500 of them. And he's just like, how have you managed to make something so vast? Here's something so amazing, do you know what I mean? That I would expect to get in like Morocco or I'd expect to get in a restaurant in like a
Oh
local
wow, that's
Indians or something,
amazing.
do you know what I mean? So,
I'd be like, pay me more.
well, he kind of wanted me to stay on with the company, but it would have meant like us kind of like relocating or whatever because they weren't staying with there and I didn't drive. Like that was my biggest
Yeah,
problem throughout all of my jobs there was I didn't drive, so it was kind of like right, well, I need to move on, so I'll go back on my side quest.
yeah. Well, it's not a side quest now; it's
Yeah,
the
I know
main
it's the main
quest.
quest now.
We've got up to it.
Um, so yeah, I carried on with events catering. Like I said, it's my background. It's what I've done. It's kind of what I thought was like my passion. Like not my passion, but it was what I was good at. Do you
Mm.
know what I mean? And once again, events catering gives you a lot of like freedom to kind of do what you want to do and kind of work up more your hours. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And it was difficult. Like events, working for an events agency is a lot more difficult than working for the likes of the race course and working for the Sage in terms of I didn't drive, so I was kind of like wherever they put me would have to be either within the area or they would have to organise like a minibus so I would only get on
Mm.
certain jobs. I remember one of them being absolutely incredible, like
Is
unbelievable.
that the royal wedding?
Yeah, that was.
Uh,
I think the NDA is probably gone now. Do you know what I mean? It's
yeah.
probably like statute of limitations or whatever. Because this was like,
You took loads of pictures.
I know, yeah, I wasn't supposed to. Well, I didn't take pictures of them though. That was a
Yeah,
difference.
it
It
was
wasn't like I
just
was
off.
like getting
It
snaps
was
for the
your
Royal Mail.
food
Do you
and
know what I
the
mean? I was
fireworks and stuff like that.
Yeah, like I wasn't making money from them. Do you know what I mean? It was just the event that I was at. And even then, I think it was an awful phone. I don't think it was like an iPhone. It was something like a Samsung, whatever. Do you know what I mean? So the photo quality would have been terrible. Um, But yeah, I did a royal wedding. It was like the Duke of Northumberland's daughter who was marrying somebody. I got contracted with a London-based company that was from like South Africa. They were just doing like amazing things at the time, so they obviously got brought up because they knew who they were. They'd obviously done other stuff for them before. That was at Alnwick Castle on their grounds, and like once again, massive marquee, like getting to work with like good chefs who knew what they were doing, and that's kind of rare in the like event catering
Mm,
side of it. Do you know what I mean? Like this was like tea smoked duck, like this was things like this, but I was working with like a 50-50 between like these agency chefs that wanted to like kind of like do really well, and then like a load of Geordies that were just kind of gave up on chefing and was just doing it for a bit of money. Do you know what
bit
I
of
mean? So
dosh.
like once again, I kind of like stood out a little bit, which was nice because it was just an opportunity for me to just kind of like shine and be like, well, I'm willing to do this. I'm willing to do this because I
Mm,
wanted all the good jobs.
mm.
Do you know what I mean? Like I wanted the good jobs while I was there. I didn't want to get given all the shit like peeling stuff. Like I wanted to be in the mix, like getting involved. And then because I'd always get a good reputation, I'd get asked by companies after, do you know what I mean? Being like, oh, can he specifically come? Because obviously, once again, I'm showing that I cared, I was dedicated.
Getting headhunted.
Yeah, kind of getting headhunted for it. And then Ben's catering just wasn't enough, really. Once again, I didn't drive. If I drove, it would have been a lot better. So I wanted something a little bit more stable. So I ended up in the Baltic
Which is literally
next to
like
the Sage.
next door to the
Like I could
Sage.
throw a ball further than that.
So what is it? The Baltic for
Art galleries.
Centre of Contemporary Art or
Yeah, Centre
something?
of
Yeah.
Contemporary Art. So I'd gone from like the Glass House, like Opera House of Newcastle and Gateshead, to the Baltic Contemporary Art, like the Northern Contemporary Art galleries. Um, and I did events in there again, and once again, just that didn't last very long. Unfortunately, it just wasn't really my place. Um, it felt a little bit thickety, a
I was
little
going to say, well,
bit.
they were a bit clicky,
Yeah, it
a
was a
bit
little
hard
bit
to get
clicky. Everyone had
on
kind
the
of came from the
inside.
same. So they had like a full team of new chefs from the restaurant, and they'd all kind of came from working at the same place. They'd all trained at the same place. They're all roughly about the same age, and I was just kind of like this lad from Middlesbrough. Like I'd come from this background that wasn't their background, and I felt like I
Yeah.
was looked down upon a little bit, even though it was like, hang on a second, whatever you can do, I can do. Do you know what I mean?
Mm,
I'm just not working in the restaurant, mate. I'm just doing events. So instead of just doing like 30 covers per head,
mad. I think that was a bit of
whoa,
a power cut there.
yeah, we've just had a crazy little power cut there.
Yeah.
Um,
Why? Let us complete
I
it.
know,
So
madness.
everything's still recording you.
That wasn't even
Everything's
us. That
fine.
was like a outside,
I know I
outside
can hear
thing.
like cars going off and
Yeah,
alarms.
madness. Um, what was I saying there? So yeah, Baltic. It was just a bit different. Didn't really feel like I fit in, so I thought I'd just kind of take a different avenue. Like this was kind of my time to go work in more fine dining places, more like nicer establishments. Kind of learn a little bit more again. Like once again, it was kind of I was utilizing the skills I had from like the race course and from the Sage, but I wasn't learning anything. And once again, like I constantly need to learn.
Yeah, you
Like I
get
need,
so bored, don't
yeah,
you?
exactly. Like I need to progress. I need to learn. Um, yeah, and it just gets difficult. Like when you're in those environments where you don't feel like you are and you're not getting fulfilled.
Get depressed, don't you?
Yeah, I did. I very much did. So I went to I just worked in multiple like pubs, and when I say pubs, I mean like very nice gastro pubs around Newcastle.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And there was a couple of places that weren't too great. I'm not gonna like shit on them or anything like that. Like it is what it is. Like a lot of those places don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
That's kind of like it's kind of it speaks for itself. I don't need to speak for how bad they were, do you know what I mean, or how bad they treated people. Like it's evident they're not there anymore.
But it wasn't the food because you were making the food.
Yeah, exactly. It
It
wasn't the
was
food.
like
It
the
was
way the business was
the way that
run.
the businesses ran, the way that the organization was, maybe the way that the owners treat things. Like
Yeah.
just not being very savvy and not like not having a lot of places not having the same vision as the chef.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like they've got one idea, the chef's got another idea, and it just
Or they
doesn't gel.
think they've got the same vision, but they're not prepared to put the work in.
For some reason we keep having blackouts where I live, so that's not very good. Um, yeah, just talking about places that I worked at. Obviously, went and worked at some absolutely amazing gastro places and learning different things about, like, once again, going back to sort of the roots of cooking.
Back to
Back
basics.
to basics, yeah, back to basics of cooking. I went and started working with chefs that, like, have gone on to do unbelievable things. Do you know what I mean? Like, some have gone and or have been on like MasterChef professionals. I've worked for like some of the best places in Newcastle and Northeast, and like it was started going back to learning about like fermentation, learning about brining, learning about pickling things, learning about development of flavors, learning about you. The one thing I'd never learned during most of the time that I was doing events catering was about using local produce.
Mm,
Yeah, I was talking about just working in like gastro pubs and stuff like that, and starting to actually use like more seasonal produce, more local produce, more like learn about farming, learning about like I don't know the actual culture behind chefing again. Do you know what I mean? Like the origins of where things come from and like how to actually utilize like this produce the most. So like I remember working in one place and like this just blew my mind when like I learned out what they did and like when I learned what they did. And we used to do like pig's cheeks croquettes. So like we used to literally use like we used to brine a pig's head. Do you know what I mean? It'd come in and like in half, like the brain taken out. And then we brine that for like 14 days, and then we take it out and slow roast it overnight on a smoker so that you get all that flavour induced into it. And then the next morning we would come in, we would take it apart, we would take all the skin off, we'd take all the fat off the skin, we would chop that down into tiny little pieces. That would go into the fryer. We'd make like bar snacks from those, and then we'd get our own flavourings, and they taste like ribbon saucy knickknacks, but like just done properly. Do you know what I mean? Things like that where it was just utilizing like every part of an animal and like the like I said, using the more seasonal produce. So like it was the first time I'd used like pigeon. You know what I mean? So it was like the first time I was like cooking pigeon on a griddle top, and then like putting things together with it and getting like local beets, and then like I said, pickling them and brine and stuff, and like kind of piecing things together, and then getting some local goat's curds, and then like it all just becoming this like harmonic thing of going like, oh, this is what chefing is.
mm,
This is what flavor is. Do you know what I mean? It's like doing 1,000 dishes is good, and it's good being able to do 1,000 dishes all at once. But when I can make this one thing unbelievable and I can spend so much time thinking about it, and that's the first time I'd ever had that opportunity to like go, wow, like I need to think about food, I need to buy books, I need to start like venturing out more into like what being a chef actually is, because I think I was kind of like a little bit bewildered. I
mm.
was working so many hours, we were so busy, do you know what I mean? Constantly, me and you were trying to have a life that I didn't actually get to like immerse myself into what especially the like the culture of Newcastle. Like I felt like I missed out a lot of it because I worked everywhere else apart from the centre of Newcastle. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And like, yeah, I suddenly became immersed in it, which was like unbelievable. Yeah,
Was it like entering like a whole new world again?
yeah, it was, and it was meeting people that like weren't arsehole head chefs and weren't like just out for themselves. Like they were there to once again like
Mm.
bring up a team. Do you know what I mean? And they wanted to like inspire, and they wanted to do better because like the better you did, the better their business did, and the more it grew. Like they
Did
just understood like the organic flow of like grassroots business. Do you understand? Like
yeah. Do you ever get imposter syndrome?
um
You're dead confident.
I'm quite a confident person. I think like throughout this entire podcast is probably translated in that in terms of everything I do. I just apply myself to. Do you know what I mean? So I'm willing to go that little bit extra to like learn stuff. If I don't know it, I will find a way of learning
I
it.
was
Do you
just
know what I
about to
mean? Like
say you're the type of person that like
I've
just like you said, if you don't know it, you're gonna learn it. You're
I've
gonna
never
learn
let
how to
anything
do it.
stop me. That's the difference. Is I've never let anything stop me. Do you know what I mean? There's all the
Hmm.
tools in the world. There's all the resources. It's just about how you go out and find them. Do you know what I mean? And then once you've found them, how do you use them?
Oh, you're very determined.
Yeah, yeah,
I
that's
love it.
I guess that's the thing is like I've just always had determination, and that determination is to whether it be working for somebody else or work or doing something for myself. Like I've always put 110 in. Do you know what I mean? Like I've never
Mm,
put 90 in. Like you're gonna have off days, But like your off
That's
days
usually,
means you're putting 100 in, you're not putting 110 in now.
I was going to say it usually means like it's you're still putting 100% in for the capacity that you've got
Yeah,
for that day.
exactly.
So it's still like everything you've got, you just haven't got as much as you had the other day,
Yeah,
you know, that type
exactly.
thing.
But it's not like your performance gets any less, or it's
Mm.
not like your thinking gets any less. Um, but yeah, obviously I just worked in places in Newcastle for a while. The only problem is, and like I've never really got into this with like many people, and obviously you know my struggles, but I have I have digestive problems. I have issues. They've been misdiagnosed for years. I've had multiple changes of diets, going from like being vegetarian, sometimes like having a vegan diet, having a ketogenic diet, having literally every diet you can think of, doing FODMAPs, doing everything to try and sort of regulate my gut and my gut health. And within that comes a lot of struggle. Do you know what I mean? It becomes a struggle in, especially in a kitchen perspective. Like when I'm stuck on a toilet, that's not good for a business.
You've lost a lot of opportunities through you being ill
Yeah,
and not knowing why. So you've not even places haven't been able to even
understand
make
or accommodate.
accommodations because it's like, oh, you've just got bad guts, and you're like, yeah, but there's something else going on. I'm trying, like
Yeah, and unfortunately for me, that's kind of like the being like a bit of a downside and a bit of like root of all evil for me is just this constant battle against like I'm not saying I'm like dying from this thing, do you know what I mean? It's just once again is I have very bad gut health, like to
it
some
affects the
extent.
quality of your life.
Yeah, and
Like,
it affects the quality of my life. It affects my mood. It affects my
hmm
temperament. It puts me in
energy,
vicious cycles. Like it reduces my energy levels. So sometimes, and then it makes you feel down on yourself because you can't give as much as yourself to a
yeah.
business or to people as you wanted to. So for me, obviously, like I said, we worked years in Newcastle, did events catering, worked in those places, but during that entire time, like it's not like it was just a sudden thing. It was like the entire time I'd always been struggling with these issues. I was just learning to manage them at times. Do you know what I mean? And just powering through most of the time.
People in various places that you've worked have often asked you quite invasive questions, haven't
I've been
like
asked
because
if
of like your health at the time.
yeah, because I've had fluctuations of like if you're watching the podcast and you know me, like I'm a thin lad. I've always been a thin lad, but I've always struggled to put weight on. That's been the biggest difference for me. Whereas most people my age, especially when you get over the age of 30, everyone I know has gone bald and fat. And
Yeah.
I'm like not at all. And I do have an active lifestyle still. I am very much on my feet all the time. And outside of what I do for work, I like to go for walks. Me and you go up like the hills, we go to
Mm.
places. So it's not like I'm just sat around doing nothing. I can't. I said at the start of the podcast, I move about constantly. It's impossible for me not to. But it does, like I said, it just makes everything a lot more difficult when, yeah, I've had people that have seen me go from like being like going to the gym and having good spouts of health and like looking after myself, but then something's triggered me and something's set it off where I've had these awful spells again, or something my energy's
You've
not
had
been
like
great.
episodes with
Yeah,
your gut
exactly.
health.
Whatever's gone on, and then I've lost like significant amount of weight. I've not been able to eat. My energy, like I said, my energy levels have been low, and I've had like head chefs pull me into offices and like genuinely ask me like out of concern, like if I'm taking like illegal substances, like if I'm taking heroin or if I'm taking like
Mm.
crack cocaine, or because I've lost that much weight over such a short period of time at points. Do you know what I mean? Where they've been like, I'm worried about you. Like, are you
Mm.
okay? Or is this like something we need to address? Do you need to get help for this? And it's like, bro, I'm just ill. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
I'm hands up, I'm just
there has
ruined.
been
Like,
points where you like you've been so like your body fat, like you don't have much body fat anyway, but there's
no,
been points where you literally didn't have any body fat.
I guess why I'm bringing all of this up though is one thing just to kind of take from it. Like if you're listening to or if you're watching this and you are kind of in this like chefing industry, I guess the thing I'm trying to explain with it is if you can get the right obviously course of help and you get the right diagnosis to start off with, obviously people can accommodate and help you out more so with that. But it's about like managing yourself, do you know what I mean? And like and sometimes just having to change and adapt what you're doing to benefit your situation. You know what I mean? Because sometimes it's not always going to work out the way that you want things because things are going to get in the way, like your gut health and
Mm,
or your mental health, or and it's always going to be a struggle. I guess the other thing I was going to say with that though was I was never good at managing myself. So like I was never good at eating. So like because of the times I worked, it was erratic
yeah.
hours and it was hard. Like as much as you think a chef's eating all day and they're enjoying all this lovely food, you're grazing on tiny
It's
things.
not a healthy environment
No,
because
not at
you've got
all. There's
no
no stability.
stability, recovery time. There's no routine.
Yeah, no routine when I'm not getting enough hours of sleep
Uh
in the
huh.
day, when you're not eating enough during the day, when you're fueling yourself with coffee and
Aren't
cigarettes
most
all day.
chefs like don't a lot of isn't it a really high percentage of like heart disease and heart attacks
Yeah, yeah,
in
very much so.
chefing?
And there's also a large correlation to like alcohol abuse, drug
Mm,
abuse, things like that, where it becomes unhealthy habits that become more coping mechanisms than they become
definitely
actual,
to cope with the stress,
yeah,
isn't
to
it?
cope with the stress rather than using actual mechanisms to help you better your life and to reduce your stress. That's just a quick fix. And unfortunately, like we've said in your
It's
podcast and in
detrimental.
everything else in life, there is no quick fix to it. It is detrimental. So, like, I guess I was going to say, like, younger chefs and other people in this industry is about, like, yes, everything you want to do in a kitchen is important. The position you want to be in, how you want to strive, and how where you want to be, and your goals are important. But never forget why you're there, and the reason is you. Do you know what I mean? And if you don't look after you, you're not going to get there. You're not going to achieve
Mm,
what you want to achieve because something's going to happen to you. Do you know what I mean? In terms of could be psychologically, could be physically, could be like you said, your gut health or anything like that. Like you're going to have episodes that you're not gonna have good times at times. You know what I mean? And it's about managing yourself where you can actually have a bit of control of your life while you're doing that. And I think if you can do both of them, you'll have a very successful life and very successful career in chefing.
do you think this comes with like age though as well?
100%.
Like being because like when you're young you just think you're indestructible. Like I used to be able to go an entire weekend on two cream eggs and go out partying and I didn't
Yeah,
die.
yeah. And I
Do
guess
you know
like
what I mean? But I couldn't do that now.
yeah, I guess it's age and your metabolisms and all these sort of
And
things,
the
and like
wisdom you get.
and the understanding of what you get
Yeah.
about your body and about how, like you said, about recovery. Obviously, I'm lucky. I've got you. Do you know what I mean? You're a personal trainer, so you're very much about like right, get 8 hours sleep. Let's eat properly. Let's nourish ourselves. Let's look after ourselves
Let's
for
get
our
out in
longevity.
nature.
Like for our longevity, because like at the end of the day, that's the thing is if you want a long, like fruitful, fulfilling career in being a chef, you need to look after yourself, you need to look after your staff, you need to create good cultures, you need to create
Mm.
harmony around all these things that will give you that longevity in this trade. Because if you don't have them, you'll find there'll just be issues or problems that will incur.
So this was like a change in vision that you were having.
Yeah, so for me it was more I needed something different. Like I loved what I did and I loved the whole idea of like mixing up flavor profiles and once again learning. Like that's my biggest thing is just developing knowledge.
You needed time to try and heal, didn't you? Like your body.
Yeah, I needed time to heal. I needed time to understand what was going on with myself. And but once again, have the opportunity to do something maybe a bit different to what I was doing because what I was doing at the time kind of wasn't working for me, wasn't working for the people I was working for. So it was kind of right. So what do I do now? You know what I mean?
What did you do?
So I found I frequented a coffee shop like every morning. Like I'd really got into like specialty coffee at the time. Obviously, there was like a massive resurgence in Newcastle. All these places were popping up, so it was kind of like, oh, I want to try here, I want to try here. And I kind of got like my favorite because it was kind of like where I got off on the bus and I could just walk through from where I was working during that point. So it was nice, like every morning going, getting a little flat white, like it was like, and like I said, like kind of learn about the beans. Like every month I'd have like a guest coffee on, so like I'd try that out, and then just kind of slowly immersing myself into it. Because I'd always drank coffee, but it'd always been
Mm.
like tin stuff or horrible stuff or whatever you get from Starbucks. But like that'd just be like some shitty bullshit drink that's filled with loads of sugar and just doesn't taste of coffee anyway. So then it was like well, I really like this thing. You know what I mean? And it kind of like it intrigues me. And there's more to it than just like, oh, here's a coffee. Do you know what I
Like
mean? There's
flavor
the flavor
profiles.
profiles, the like the origins of where it comes from, like learning about farms, like the different brewing techniques, or like the amount of equipment that was available. And that's not just like brewing like stuff at home. Then there was like, oh well, then there's all these expensive coffee machines. And once again, these are very technical things. Do you know what I mean? But like they're very simple but very technical in what they do. And it's like I wanted to learn about them. Do you know what I mean? Like about like the compression and about like how much pressure is needed to like force an espresso shot and why and all this sort of stuff. And I was kind of like, well, this would be a cool job. Do you know what I mean? Like this would be a cool job.
Set hours.
Yeah, set hours, like not open on Sundays. So I've always got a Sunday. I'd never had
Oh
a Sunday
yeah.
off in like 7, 8 years. Do you know what I mean? I was like,
Wow.
yeah, game. They had a job up. It wasn't great money. Do you know what I mean? It was a massive pay cut, but it
We had
was
had chats about like what was important though, and
yeah,
it was your health.
and it was my health. And so as long as we could manage a budget, that was
Hmm.
fine. Do you know what I mean? Like, we weren't going to be as like lavish and be able to go out as much and do things, but
But it was going to be temporary.
yeah, it was only temporary. And I guess while I was there, like it was a great place to work at. It was in Granger Market, just centre of Newcastle. It was good at the time, and then it wasn't. Like
She got bored.
I got bored very quickly, only because the place I was working at, I thought I had more progression than what it did, and unfortunately, it was a very old roastery. It'd been going for over 100 years. It had been run by the same family for the entirety of it, pretty much, and they were very much like family based. So it was very much like kind of again once again, it's like who you know, what not what you know, not
Yeah.
what you're willing to apply. And I was just speaking to people in there, and they'd been there 3 or 4 years, and they'd never really like progressed, even though you could see all these people had like they could easily do multiple jobs. Do you know what I mean? Um, so I was like, well, I think I've got as much as I can because I'm learning more outside of this than I am while I'm here. Do you know what I mean? I'm actually
Yeah.
willing to put more into this outside of it. So we took the step to move to Middlesbrough, like we said in your podcast. Like I wasn't really happy with Newcastle. We've been up there nearly 10 years. Like you weren't kind of fulfilled in any sort of means as it was. So
No, I didn't like my job.
then I was like, right, well, I was like, well, I need to do something a little bit different in terms of what I'm doing. Like I'd love to be a chef, but how can I physically do this when like it doesn't have the structure and balance that I need?
Hadn't you already been thinking about like all through your chefing career anyway? Like one day you wanted your own place.
That's it. I think if you're any sort of chef that wants to aspire to be a great chef, is that's your number one goal. You know what I mean? Is you want your own place, and it could be something grand, it could be something small, it could be whatever you desire it to be. But for me, it was very particular, kind of what I wanted. Do you know what I mean? And I loved the culture in Newcastle, but I felt like it was kind of missing something. I came from a town that had nothing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was kind of like, right, well, I'd love to do something like this back home. So while I was at the coffee shop, I was putting plans together for a, a tiny little like hatch, just to serve coffee and maybe pizza slices or something daft like that from. I had business plans in place and projections for something a little bit bigger, something more in terms of like what I do now. Obviously, I'm going to get into that. And then I had something even bigger than that, where I was looking at like, well, what if I had a roastery? What if I had this?
I
Whatever else? And
didn't know that
obviously,
one.
yeah, I went
You kept
wild with
that
it.
one.
But obviously, that would have been like hundreds of grands, and I would never
Yeah.
have got the funding for it. So it was just pipe dreams, and
That's
you
why
know,
you kept it to
it's
yourself.
on the shelf. Like I said, it's on the shelf. Like
Oh, okay.
it's always there, and you might pull it back one day.
Come out in a few years' time.
But yeah, then it was like realistically, how can I do this though? Because like obviously I'd had managerial roles in terms of kitchens, but I'd never ran like a team in that way. Do you know what I mean? And like ran a
Mm.
business in that way. I'd done commercial awareness courses. I'd done financial awareness courses with all these events companies I worked for. I've been company commitment days and learn about the finances, learn about projections for the years, learn about
You loved all
shares.
that.
I loved it all. Like I'm an absolute nerd. I'm just really good at maths, Anna. So like
Ism.
numbers, yeah, just I'm just yeah, I'm not getting into that.
We're not saying it lightly.
Yeah,
It's a fact.
but anyway, the whole that whole thing. And then I was like, right, well, how can I translate exactly what you said there? I love that stuff. I've always been interested in business. I've always been like sort of entrepreneurial in the sense of wanting to work for myself and wanting to do something, but not necessarily knowing what it is, just willing
Mm.
to apply things. And then, yeah, it was like, well, what do I do from here? And it was like, well, I've never been to university. I always tried. And like now I'm old enough and like I've got all these UCAS things and whatever else and all
Yeah,
these
off your
qualifications under my
chefing and
belt. Yeah,
stuff,
like
wasn't it?
I've got qualifications coming to my eyeballs from chefing. Um so I was like, cool, I'll go do business. So yeah, got got into Middlesbrough, like did that. That was madness, just purely because it was like, once again, it's an age thing though. I think if I was 18 and I was learning what they were teaching me and I hadn't been and learned, been to, and done all these
Lived it.
commercial awareness courses and done all these things, then I wouldn't have had the, like, I already had the knowledge they were trying to teach me. And unfortunately, I didn't feel like I was getting anything from it. And then a pandemic happened. Do
Mm,
you know what I mean? So it was kind of, it all went to online learning. I literally said at the start of this podcast, like, I cannot sit and stare at a computer screen. Like, I
yeah.
cannot do it. Also, have you ever tried, like, I'm used to working in teams and kitchens where I can physically go up to someone and go, bro, what's happening? Like, I need you to
Yeah.
do this now and it needs to be done in 20 minutes because otherwise we're in the shit. You know what I mean? And you're sinking everybody. Have you ever tried to get someone to do like a coursework when you're at university in a team? Now imagine trying to get them to do it over a Zoom call when they're sat in the boxes at home and they don't give a, do you know what I mean? Like they do not care. Everyone's stopped caring. Nobody knows whether like the world's going to exist in a couple of months. Like everything's going tits up. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
nobody can see the families. So it was kind of like nobody cared.
Yeah.
Like everyone was just waiting for it to end, and they were just happy to take the loans. You know what I mean? Like, and I did the exact same thing. I was just like, well, I need a means to an end here.
Yeah.
You've put me on furlough, and I work in part time in a coffee shop. So can you imagine how much I'm getting off furlough?
Mm,
Nothing. So yeah, obviously during the pandemic, that happened in business. Wasn't really once again fulfilling. Like it kind of served a purpose for a small while, but
I'm just frustrated with it, man. You
yeah,
the
it
money you were spending on it.
yeah, just looking at going, oh, I'm just getting another like 12 grand in debt per year, and this isn't really feeding anything or actually teaching me anything that I don't already know now. And also for the type of business that, like I said to you, it depends on what type of business you want.
Mm,
It's all good if you want to go work for a Fortune 500, if you want to go work for a massive corporation, then that's good to learn the stuff that they're teaching you. I wanted to learn about people. I wanted to learn about people
mm,
skills, how to learn how to teach people on a day-to-day basis and work with people on a day-to-day basis, how to be a manager of my own independent place,
mm,
not of a large corporation where everyone's a number. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
Because that's not my thing. So I was working in a coffee shop and I was like I said, part time, and an opportunity came up, and it was kind of like, right, well, I can put some money into this. I can use my loans. I can basically, someone was leaving the business and there was an opportunity for me to step in, and with that opportunity also brought back everything that I'd learned from being in Newcastle, and sort of every admiration, every bit of aspiration I had for owning my own business, for wanting to make my own menus, for wanting to put my stamp on Middlesbrough, for just wanting to be part of the community again and like bring something that Middlesbrough didn't have, and meet people in these environments, because I'd already met loads of awesome people. I'd met more awesome people in the shop than I had for a lot of years, and
Mm,
definitely through uni. Like I met a couple of nice people that like I still speak to from university, but the vast majority of them I don't speak to anymore. But everybody in my shop I know. You know what I mean? Like I know their stories. They tell me things like whether it's good, whether it's bad, like, and obviously that stays with me. Do you know what I mean? And we share those together. But it was kind of like, wow, like I've got an opportunity to kind of spread my wings again and it to work for me. Like it's a coffee shop. It shuts at 3 o'clock. Do you know what I mean? Like
mm. that kind of work-life
that
balance
work-life
that you worked
balance,
after.
and yeah, and obviously I joined during a pandemic, and it was scary, like very very scary. Like we didn't know where it was going to go. Um, Still don't. Do you know what I mean? Like especially in an independent business that's like constantly growing, but like you're
Mm,
constantly faced with like small adversities every time. Like you get through a pandemic and people can come back into your shop and they start spending more money, but then you need more staff again, but then are staff willing to come back? You know, some people are scared. Like it's, you know, it was a very scary time. Um, but it's just been mad because it's probably like everything I've done has got me to this point. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like
but you didn't know it at the
I
time.
didn't know it. And like this is even when I talk about art, when I talk about music, when I talk about everything, like what I do and what me and my business partner do in the coffee shop, like fuels everything we've wanted. You know what I mean? And it's just about managing it so that we're always making sure we're getting the most out of it and our staff's getting the most out of it and the town's getting the most out of it. So like I said, the music side, we put gigs on, we put events on, we have like live noise gigs that are like once a month, do you know what I mean? Where people coming in and experimenting with stuff, and then I get to incorporate my artwork into it because when I first started in there, I started making branding and merchandise, and we started making mugs with like geometric symbols of like my hometown, which give me like this bit of pride that like
I went crazy for those mugs.
yeah, and the glass and the glasses and like you know, the thing that made me really proud of it was um that people wanted to take them home with them. So it
Mm,
was like you like Middlesbrough's a very large university town, kind of like the thing that keeps it going. Do you know what I mean? To some respect, especially in the center of town. And it was like amazing to see people that were like, "Oh, I want to get this because I'm like finishing my term." And I want something to take home, or I want to send something back to my mom,
yeah,
or my mom and dad who came up when it was my
from up and down
graduation
the
week, and they
country.
absolutely loved it. Do you know what I mean? And so you just like you're giving yourself a little piece of somebody to take with them, and like they're appreciating that. So it's not just the food aspect that you're doing. Do you know what I mean? It's like I said, it's something so much bigger for me. Like it might be something so small for them, but it's so much bigger for me because once again, it's just a part of my history and something I've learned and something that I've wanted to apply that I now get to apply and do something that I absolutely love doing. Do you know what I mean? And it just kind of like fulfills the mark across the board. Um, yeah, it's mad. Like it's absolutely mad. But once again, you just everything I've done is just about learning and adapting, and this business is about learning and adapting and constantly being on your toes. And also, willing to be like, I guess there's a massive misconception in business where everyone thinks business you have to be like a hard ass,
Mm,
and you've got to be like rough and like you've got to be notorious in it and like you've got to
cutthroat.
cut throat and you've got to step on people to get to where you want to be. And like it, in everything I've learned over the past however many years, and especially with the trends that I see now in the industry and like especially the catering industry itself and the amount of places that are popping up and the amount of independent businesses that are coming through at the moment, like everyone's like slowly building each other up because if you don't,
Mm,
you're the outcast now. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, you
Like
you
you are.
ostracize yourself.
Yeah, you're pushing yourself out of there. So it's about going like, cool. Well, like I don't necessarily need to utilize you, but I can like always big you up. Do you know what I mean? And like whether that's word of mouth or whether that's like promoting your stuff on our Instagram or whatever it is. Do you know what I mean? And it's about like just having that like community spirit and community vibe that keeps these things going. Do you know what I mean? And kind of keeps it worth doing. Because if it wasn't, it'd only be for me, and like
Mm,
that's just not fulfilling. Like it just being a monetary thing all the time, like it can't be. That's kind of why I
mm.
like doing this podcast. You know what I mean? It's not a monetary thing. Like most people like have to put money into these things. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, I'm doing this on a small scale with a lot of cameras and
That we
some
already had.
that we already have and bits and bobs. And obviously, I'd love for it to be like become this thing where I've got like a little like obviously I've made my own little studio here. I'm very privileged and very happy to have it. Obviously, I'm always going to aspire to have more. you know what I mean? But it's about bringing people along with me and like growing with this, do you know what I mean? And that's like all I try and do in my shop, and that's all I want to do with this is just like highlight people and like highlight
Yeah.
how good Middlesbrough can be and how highlight how good the Northeast can be. Like
You've met some absolute legends in that coffee shop,
I've
haven't
met
you, in
some
your business?
amazing people, like
People you wouldn't even think like with the type of jobs they have, like from Middlesbrough, like
mad,
insane.
absolutely mad, like
So
people
many
who
interesting
make
people.
films, like who are film writers, people that are like lecturers in like fucking like Black history, do you know what I mean? And can teach you so much about like basically about ignorance, do you know what I mean? About
Mm,
how ignorant we can be as like individuals, and just once again just going back to like the community side of it. And the more you hear, the more you learn, the more you grow, do you know what I mean? And it's like that's the best part about this whole chefing journey for me, is I never thought it would get me to here, if that makes sense. I always thought
yeah.
it'd always be for me.
Thought you'd be like a exec
I,
chef
I thought I'd be a
somewhere,
Gordon
like
Ramsay, a big dick, do
yeah,
you know what I
a
mean? Like
big
fuck
dick.
it. Yeah, like big dick Gordon Ramsay, like fucking like shitting on people to get to where I need to,
Yeah,
and like, yeah, I'm not a millionaire. That's fine.
you're rich in other ways though.
Exactly. Like I'm rich in so many other ways. In even in terms of this podcast, like this is only the third episode I'm putting out. I thought when I started this, it was going to be a struggle because I was going to go in a different direction with it. Do you know what I mean? Because I thought it would be funny. And then I realized that wasn't fulfilling. Do you know what I mean? So I've had to change and adapt this. And also, it doesn't fit with the criteria of my shop. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't
Yeah,
work. Like
your values.
my values, the values
Yeah,
and ethos of my shop, it doesn't coincide with. So, like, the whole thing with this is like I said, getting to know people, getting to know their stories, getting to highlight them, getting to bring them up, and doing it together. Like,
there's enough negativity in the world, and there's enough horrible stories. It's time to have like good stories, get to know people, get to
yeah,
build a community.
and I guess like I'm gonna kind of tie this little bit of section off with this because like I guess as this kind of podcast goes on and progresses, I guess I'll like tell more about my shop and probably like leak out,
Reveal more of you.
reveal more. Ooh, you know, we'll have a little grand thing of what it is, even though everybody who's listening and watching this knows who the fuck I am anyway. So I just find it hilarious. But like I said, we're going in a different direction with it. So like, and it's something that really excites me, and I guess that's all I've ever looked for in what I've done is something that excites me and fulfills me in a way that I need in my life. Do you know what I mean? And it's not selfish. Like, yeah,
I love it.
yeah, it's good.
Ah,
But yeah, so
we don't want to reveal too much more, do we? Because we need to be able to come
I know, yeah, I want to
back.
have other podcasts with just me on explaining more and like
This is part one.
in time I'd like to have my business partner on when like this develops and grows more. But I guess the one thing I was going to say with the whole like podcast thing was obviously like I said I'd started this off, this only third episode, and like I've already got so many people wanting to like tell me the stories,
Yeah,
and
wanting to be
they're
involved.
wanting to be involved, and I think it's purely once again is because of the community aspect of it, is because of the wanting to bring people up and wanting to tell their stories, wanting to highlight good places like in the northeast because there's so fucking many of them, like so many of them.
Oh,
Like
amazing.
I'm gonna do a little shout out now. What I want to do on each one of my podcasts.
Sit back, Tom.
I am. I'm just rearranging. I'm just rearranging. But I want to do a little shout out on one of these. Just little customer satisfaction thing. I'm not necessarily going to go into like where I've had amazing or what the reason why it's been amazing satisfaction. I just kind of want to point out like a business or two maybe in Middlesbrough, but because we keep going further afield. Each one
Yeah,
I've done one in Scotland when I went
and
to Scotland and
spin.
I pointed out Scotland. Then the one I did with you, we pointed out two places in Scotland and then two places in Spain. So I just kind of want to like give a little shout out. So I'm just going to basically, I think I'm going to go with Finn's Bakery. I think I'm
Yeah,
going to do it. I think I'm going to go with Andy. I
even though
think,
you can't eat there
yeah, I
anymore.
can't eat there at the moment, and it kills me because like he's such a lovely guy, and
And his
he
stuff's
literally opened
got
up extra days, and I
amazing.
was like, yeah, I'm going to be there, bro. And then my guts were like, yeah. So disregarding that anyway, everything he does is phenomenal. Like, he's bringing something to Middlesbrough. There's a couple of other places like it that do stuff like that, but I just feel like his authenticity and the reason why he's doing it kind of stands out more to me than anything. He's makes unbelievable croissants, unbelievable pain au chocolat. He makes cruffins. He makes the best cinnamon swirls I've ever eaten in my life.
And they're massive as well.
The ginormous, like, it's always amazing value because obviously it's competitively priced for Middlesbrough. Do you know what I mean? And he wants to give everybody in Middlesbrough value. The best part about it for me is like, it doesn't have to be in like a badass city. Do you know what I mean? In like this big place or whatever. He's literally doing it in an industrial estate, in a unit. There's a little brewery next door. Do you know what I mean? And he's just doing like big things for all the right reasons. He's genuinely kind-hearted. He has all the time in the world for people, and he genuinely loves what he does. So basically, my customer satisfaction is every time I go to Finn's and I have to stand there and just basically saliva at all of his baked goods, but everybody else can enjoy them. So I think we should go give them a shout out.
Definitely. They're in Guisborough, aren't
They're
they?
in Guisborough, yeah,
Yeah.
they're in Guisborough. Just behind Marks and Spencer's, like you said, little industrial estate.
Not too far from Borough.
Not far at all. Yeah, so I think you should get yourself there. Yeah. Yeah, so I'm going to close off the podcast. I've been a little bit serious. Frank wants some funnies.
I do.
So she's going to ask me some daft little questions. They've got apps. I don't even know what they're going to entail, to be honest with you. So we're just going to let her ride with this one. She's going to ask me some questions, and we're going to bounce off this, and hopefully you like it.
Okay.
Go.
Are you ready? So, animals could talk. Which one do you think would be the funniest to have a conversation with, and what do you imagine they'd say? What animal's gonna have the most crack?
I don't want to go with like a stereotypical like chimpanzee, because I'm just thinking of like King Louis from like what's it called, Jungle Book.
Yeah.
I'm the king of this fingers.
I've got one for you. I love loads of stories. Pigeon.
A pigeon. Oh, dirty little pigeon.
Yeah, dirty little street pigeon.
Oh, yeah, pigeon. Pigeon would know everything, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
They're a bit dumb though at times as well. So,
Are they though?
well, maybe they're not.
They're just traumatized.
All right, we'll go with yours. I like yours.
The
Pigeon's
good.
definitely up there. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're agreeing with me?
I'm stealing yours
Cool.
because I like the pigeon.
Listeners, viewers, comment what your animal would be.
Yeah.
It'd be
your
really
animal?
interesting. Really interesting.
What would you like to speak to?
Glad you like that one.
I did like that one.
Okay.
It's either that or dogs. It'd have to be dogs, just purely because I'd love to be able to speak to my own dog.
You'd love to be able to speak to Butters?
Yeah.
She'd just complain.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
All she'd do is
They'd
complain.
be like coming home like after work and just be like, meow, 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 meow.
I've been here all day waiting for you. I thought you were never going to come back.
All right, cool. Right, next.
Okay. What's the worst thing you've ever stood on in bare feet?
Oh, well, I did stand on one of these microphones before we started. Luckily, it still works. But
that's pretty bad.
Yeah, not in bare feet, right? But this is awful. So this goes back to chef related. I stood in a vat of soup one time.
Oh.
So, but it wasn't barefoot, but it did completely immerse my shoe and like my sock and everything, and it was boiling hot as well. But when I worked at the race course, so we used to have like massive vats that you used to make soup in. You'd get the big stick blender, blend it out, and then it'd have like a valve where you could release it. So obviously we'd have like pans and tubs and containers to put stuff in. So we had one of those underneath it as it was coming out. Someone had closed it off, but didn't tell me that it was next to me, like the bench I was working on. So I like came around the opposite side of the bench, stood there doing what I was doing, turned as if I was going to walk past it, and then just full on foot into like a massive container. But it's disgusting because they get called baby drowners. Yeah, I don't know why. It's awful.
That's awful.
But basically large plastic containers in kitchens, and I just full on stepped into one of those.
Oh, that's savage.
Other than that, I think plugs are hands down the worst.
A plug's painful.
Wet, anything wet.
So mine is
I know what mine is now anyway.
A slug. and it
because they
went
don't.
proper in between my toes.
Oh,
I'd rather stand on a poo.
well, I was about to say poo because when we used to have a little Stavanger Bull Terrier, like the
Oh,
amount of
little
times we
Gwen.
stood in poo, but like
When she was a puppy.
yeah, when she was a puppy, but yeah, the whole standing on a slug because it doesn't mulch in between. Anyway, carry on,
Okay.
carry on.
What's the most embarrassing song on your playlist that you secretly love?
Oh,
Do you have any?
I'm not embarrassed, am I?
I know. So you probably
I have no
don't, do
guilt and no
you?
shame when it comes to my music. Right, I say the only thing that I would have on any of my playlists that people would be like, really, is we've got a playlist from when we went to Barcelona
Oh
that I
yeah.
made for the road trip, and it's got a shitload of Katy Perry on.
You
And
love it though?
I love it. I absolutely love it. Dark Horse comes on, and I'm like,
It's like OG Katy Perry when she was
yeah.
like mint. I don't know what mine is.
Um,
I have weird stuff.
yeah, but other than that, like, I guess my only other guilty pleasures would be like I don't listen to like I can tell you now I don't listen to like no, I'm lying, right? I put some random playlist on Spotify and it threw out Harry Styles. And I was trying to say this in the last episode and I got mixed between Ollie Sykes and Harry Styles. And I said both their names like mixed together.
Okay.
But anyway, Harry Styles. So one of his tunes came on because I think I had like a Alt J playlist on or something like that. And I was like, this tune's a banger. And then like I had it on and I was singing away the next day away. Didn't realise because I just put the same playlist on again. And then someone I worked with was like, are you singing Harry Styles? And I was like, am I? No.
I love it.
But I was. I totally was and I totally digged it. So I'm not even embarrassed though because like
I don't know what mine would be because
I just enjoy music. I don't care.
mine would be if I've got a playlist on, it's got like normal songs on, but then I get really into like
You
like scores
I was
from
about to
TV
say, yeah,
shows.
you get into like mad shit like
So like something from Dark would come on, like
yeah, but it's not like a typical like Game of Thrones or whatever. It's something so like obscure that
like,
no one would listen to.
I'll just turn that off. I've got one more question.
Go on then.
If you were to perform in a talent show,
Oh.
what would your talent be and why? I know what your talent would be.
Well, I've got
Being
loads.
Shaggy.
Well, I've got loads of daft little talents, don't I? So like, obviously, I can do like dialects. So like, obviously, it could be Geordie, Scouse, like Cockney, Brummie. Like, I can do loads of different accents. But then, yeah, obviously, we watch. Well, we've got like I've subscribed to Mild High Patreon, don't I? And we've like met Dean and met Amy before, and we were going to go down. Unfortunately, obviously they've had to cancel the shows, so like I'm not going to get to go. But yeah, they had a fella on that was doing a Shaggy impression. I think it was the first time he'd done it, so I totally let him off with it. But like, yeah, he won the talent show, and I feel like I want like I need vengeance
You want to
for
be
that.
able
Like,
to do
yeah,
Shaggy.
yeah, like I need to purely because like, yeah, it was on it. You call me on that.
I don't know what mine would be, but the camera is gonna die, so we need to wrap it up.
Cool, right? Well, this has been.
Did you like them?
Yeah, this has been.
Should we do them again?
Yeah, let's do them again, especially when there's just me and you do them. To be fair, it'd be quite funny doing them with guests because I'm obviously I want to ask them like serious things about industry, about stuff like that. So yeah, obviously if you're going to be my producer, it'd be nice to kind of just like throw a little curveball in there. So yeah, class, right? Awesome. There's another pod.
Yeah, thanks for watching.
Love you, babes. Love you guys. Subscribe, like, do all that shit.
Love you too, and love you, babes, on the YouTube.
On the YouTubes.
On the tubes. Bye.
And on the Spotify's.
Bye.
Bye.
On the Spotify. Sorry, guys. Bye.
Bye.